Welcome to The Alternative Investor. Cloud Atlas Investing has two ETF products that provide a diversified investment in 50 companies across the African continent, excluding South Africa. The Cloud Atlas Real Estate ex-SA ETF is an investment product that invests in the real estate companies on the African continent, and the other is the AMI Big50 ex-SA ETF that tracks Africa's blue chip companies. Founding Director and CEO of Cloud Atlas Investing, Maurice Madiba, joins us now live to talk to us about exactly how you can get exposure to the African markets. Maurice, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Anastasia.
So before we get into the actual aspects and look at the different ETFs, what prompted the idea to want to have a look at the African markets and provide investors with the opportunity to have a play?
So I think if you look at the past 20 years, you've seen Africa come into the fore in terms of its GDP growth and a lot of potential that it holds that investors speak about. So, as a young African man, I was looking at these news headlines and saying to myself, well, if people do invest, the current asset classes they have are typically your offshore markets and, the JSE, which is here in South Africa. But there's no real access to tap into markets like Nigeria, like Egypt, like Tunisia. All of these markets seem to evade us as investors. So we sought out about 5 years ago to set out on this journey to create easier access into the African markets and really give investors that option of getting a good exposure to primary listed African companies across 15 different markets.
All right. Let's discuss, some of these sectors that you find quite interesting right now from your point of view.
So healthcare has started to pick up quite a bit. In our recent rebalance, we've added a Unimed, which is a pharmaceutical company up in North Africa. It does seem to play quite a big role, healthcare in Africa, in the sense that, African countries had prioritized a lot of these sustainable development goals, which were centered around healthcare and a lot of that. So the building of hospitals, the production and distribution of pharmaceutical medicines is something that's now an interesting part of the mix in the Big 50. The typical sectors like banking and telcos are all in there. You can see that Africa has managed to leapfrog the technological revolution to some extent and is now able to really be engaged in the digital economy. So that makes up two of our biggest sectors. And surprisingly, mining is quite low exposure in our ETF, given the fact that a lot of African mining companies are predominantly listed in developed markets like London, like Australia and the US. So because we trade predominantly what's listed in these African markets, we don't have that much exposure to mining. But there are some exciting prospects in the pipeline around mineral beneficiation, which we're hoping to participate in the near future.
Right. Let's discuss the ETFs now. So one who wants exposure to some of these blue chip companies and the other for the person who wants exposure to real estate. What kind of investor are you looking for and who are these ETFs designed for?
Yeah, so if I can put out a statement there, this is Africa for Africans. So we've really designed this for a man on the street to be able to pick up a share on the JSE, which is where our ETFs are listed. With the JSE representing Africa's largest stock exchange by market cap, market depth, and just general coverage, you can pick it up there on the JSE. And it's also designed for your institutional investors who may not have enough resources to allocate to analyze these African markets on a stock-by-stock basis, but given that our regulation has changed and tipped to allow pension funds to put 10% into Africa, this is a very neat and quick way to get that exposure into pan-African markets. On the property fund, we are in the process of repurposing that one, looking at another asset class, which would be African fixed income, so African government bonds, which are hard currency. So still the same principle in the sense that you've got a instrument that's backed by some kind of guarantee. With government bonds, it would be a government guarantee, and with property, it would be the actual physical property that you have. So that's something that's in the pipeline for us for the next couple of months. And again, that is open to retail and institutional investors to participate.
Right. And any risks that investors should bear in mind?
So, I mean, Africa has specific risk, which we look at addressing. We've got an index review committee, which has, we had a recent rebalance, and there was 3 chartered financial analysts there who joined us. So we've got a process in terms of being able to manage some of the risks that you engage with when you invest in African markets and really strip those out for investors. So when you look at institutional investors, this is something that really speaks to them. How do you manage country risk and political risk in Africa? But for a man on the street and ordinary investors, it's more about having some kind of diversity in your portfolio from what you typically have at this moment. So it's more about the returns that you can generate. And when you look at the potential for Africa, it's stretched out over a long period of time, but the return profile there is real, and that's something that investors can look forward to.
Maurice, thank you so much for your time this afternoon. That's Maurice Madiba, who is the director and founder of Cloud Atlas Investing. That's it from me. I'll be back next week with the next session of Alternative Investing.